Are both parties present and ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. The United States is ready to proceed.
Okay, government, do you wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. Before we begin, we just had a few preliminary matters to address.
The defense as well.
Okay, I'll hear from the government first.
Yes, Your Honor. Would you like us to ask permission before screen sharing exhibits that have been pre-admitted?
To the extent that there's already been a ruling on this, please follow that ruling. To the extent that there's not been a ruling on this, I'd like you to just let me know that you're going to display a pre-admitted exhibit. Just say I'm displaying exhibit 14. It's already been pre-admitted, just so I know. And obviously, you know this, but don't display something that's not been admitted without asking.
Yes, Your Honor. And we also ask that witnesses be considered constructively sworn.
Okay.
And lastly, we'd like to introduce ourselves to the court before we proceed.
Okay.
So my name is Aaliyah Rapping, and I represent the United States.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Kristen Hart, and I am second chair on behalf of the United States.
Morning to both of you. And defense counsel, do you wish? Sorry, Ms. Rapping, I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you have anything else?
Oh no, I was just saying we're ready to proceed. I'm sorry.
Great. Defense, do you have anything before we get going?
Yes, Your Honor. First, may I state my appearance for the record?
Sure.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Brooke Nues, counsel for Ms. Bassett in today's case. Today, I'm joined by my co-counsel, Leah Parial.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Who will be assisting me with the technical aspects of today's trial. Just a few preliminary matters before proceeding, Your Honor.
Okay.
First, pursuant to Rule 615, we would like to ask that all witnesses are considered constructively sequestered at this time.
Okay.
And in addition, we would like to point out that Ms. Bassett will not be joining us in court today, and there's no need to identify the defendant.
Government, is that your understanding of the agreement that you guys have reached pretrial?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Your Honor, today, pursuant to Stipulation 7, Exhibits 4 through 33 are pre-admitted into evidence.
Okay, I'll tell you the same thing I told Ms. Rapping, which is just understanding that there are some pre-admitted exhibits. Before you display something, I just like you to kind of remind me that this is a pre-admitted exhibit.
Yes, Your Honor.
And we're going to display it, okay?
Of course. And lastly, Your Honor, the defense would just like to ask if there's any time you can't hear or see us, please just let us know.
Okay.
And with that, the defense is ready to proceed.
Okay, before you proceed with your opening statement, Ms. Rapping, I'll just remind our jurors, our scoring jurors, to switch to speaker view now, as we're now going to hear opening statements from the government and the defense. So if you could all switch to speaker view right now. And Ms. Rapping, whenever you're ready.
May it please the court. Kara Bassett wanted power. She wanted power over the money. She wanted power over the park, and she wanted power over the elephants. For years, she was told, you have no power. You have no say and you have no control. So she came up with a plan to get that power that she so desperately wanted. And part of that plan was to eliminate her husband, Don Clark. Members of the jury, Miss Bassett had a dream to open up an elephant sanctuary to protect what she saw as the most important things in the world, the elephants. Her husband, Don Clark, promised that when the two were married, he would make that dream come true, but he didn't. Instead, he created the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park, a zoo where elephants were kept in cages, subject to abusive training methods, and people would ride on their backs. You'll learn that the defendant was disgusted, and she expressed her disgust with Don. And year after year after year since 2011, she heard the same response. You have no power. As long as it's my money, we'll run it how I want to run it. You'll learn for years the defendant and Don Clark would fight over this park. And those fights would get so heated that you'll learn Kara Bassett threatened his life. You'll learn Don Clark had to file a restraining order against Kara Bassett to protect himself. For years, Don Clark abused Kara Bassett's dream, so she came up with a plan. She got a power of attorney in May of 2017, stating that in the event of Don Clark's disappearance, she would get all of the money, all of the power, and the elephant zoo. You'll learn that from FBI agent Steph Branham that when he investigated the park, he found a syringe of carfentanil missing. A syringe of a deadly poison that Kara Bassett used to murder her husband. She made him disappear. After injecting her husband with this deadly poison, she rolled his body out in a wheelchair, threw him in the back of a van, and drove him to the Big Gum Swamp. You'll hear that forensic evidence found on the bottom of Kara Bassett's shoes connect her to the wheelchair, the swamp, and the van. You'll also hear from Agent Steph Branham that Kara Bassett's actions were not consistent with a grieving wife. You'll learn that she invoked power of attorney only 2 months after her husband went missing. Finally, she got her power. So today we charge Kara Bassett with murder. And we brought this charge because we are confident that Kara Bassett intentionally and deliberately caused the death of Don Clark. And today we have the burden to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. And we welcome that burden because there is no reasonable doubt that Kara Bassett is guilty. So at the end of this trial, I will come before you and ask that you find the only verdict that is just. I will ask that you find Kara Bassett guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Defense, do you wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can proceed whenever you're ready.
No body, no search, no murder. Miss Rapping just stood here and told you that Don Clark is dead. But what she failed to tell you, no one's found the body. Miss Rapping just told you the FBI conducted a thorough search. But what she failed to tell you, that search only had one suspect. Miss Rapping just told you Kara Bassett is a murderer. But what she failed to tell you is that in today's case, we do not know if there was a murder at all. Members of the jury, no body, no search, no murder. On August 19th, Miss Bassett knew something was wrong. Her husband was missing and Miss Bassett was terrified. So a week later, she put her faith in the authorities. But what she didn't know is over the course of the FBI's investigation, and they wouldn't bring back her husband. No, members of the jury, till this day, Don Clark has yet to be found. Instead, the FBI pointed the finger at Miss Bassett. Today, the people have charged Miss Bassett with murder. And in bringing this charge, they have accepted that they have the highest burden in our legal system. A burden to prove every element of this charge beyond a reasonable doubt. Members of the jury, it's important to recognize that in today's trial, this is a burden the people have. It will never shift to the defense, and it is simply a burden that they cannot meet. Now, to attempt to meet this burden, the people will call Agent Steph Branham to the stand. When Agent Branham is testifying, I want you to listen for what she tells you. But more importantly, what she cannot tell you. Agent Branham will not be able to testify that she has found the body of Don Clark. She won't be able to testify that the FBI has the alibis for 4 other suspects. And she won't be able to testify that this was definitively a murder. So, members of the jury, if the FBI doesn't have answers, who does? Today, the defense's own witness, Joe Young, will take the stand. Miss Young will tell you that when the FBI wasn't doing their job, she decided to search for answers herself. So she went to Costa Rica, she spoke to locals, and she found evidence Don Clark wasn't murdered. In fact, he may be alive today. Members of the jury, by the end of this trial, you will find yourself with more questions than you have answers. Because on the night of August 18, no one, not the FBI, not the government, not opposing counsel, knows what happened to Don Clark. And the fact is, there's too many reasonable explanations. And that is reasonable doubt. Because members of the jury, there was no body, there was no search, and there was no murder. Which is why at the end of this trial, I will be asking for a verdict of not guilty.
Thank you, counsel. Before you call your first witness, Ms. Rapping, I'm going to just ask our scoring judges, our jury, to switch now to gallery mode and to keep your view on gallery mode throughout the testimony of the witnesses until we get the closing arguments. So I'm going to switch to gallery mode now. And Ms. Rapping, if you're ready, you can call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the United States calls FBI agent Steph Branham to the stand. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good morning. My name is Steph Branham. I'm an FBI special agent out of the Jacksonville field office.
Agent Branham, how long have you been working for the FBI?
A long time, ma'am. I became an FBI special agent in 2002, graduated to being a senior special agent in 2012. I've conducted over 100 different criminal investigations over that time period.
How are you involved in today's case?
I was the lead investigator, ma'am. We got a call on August 25th, 2017 from a Kara Bassett. She claimed her husband, Don Clark, had gone missing on August 18th. We launched investigation soon after that.
And what was the first step in your investigation after receiving this call from Kara Bassett?
First, we searched the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park. It was where both of the Clarks resided.
And what did you find in your search of the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park?
When we searched the Elephant Park, we ended up at a storage unit on the premises. We found a logbook for a drug called carfentanil during that search.
And would you recognize a copy of that logbook if I showed it to you?
I would, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, my co-counsel will now display Exhibit 19, which is a pre-admitted exhibit.
Thank you.
Agent Branham, could you explain to the jury what you learned after reviewing this logbook?
Of course, ma'am. When we reviewed this logbook, we expected to find 24 unused syringes of carfentanil in the storage unit. However, we only found 23 of those syringes. From that, we determined that one of the carfentanil syringes was unaccounted for and had gone missing.
And what was the significance of the missing syringe of carfentanil?
We learned that carfentanil was extremely dangerous to humans. It's 5,000 times more toxic than heroin, and doses as low as 1 milligram can kill an individual.
After finding the missing tranquilizer, what did you do next in your investigation?
Next, we searched Mr. Clark's van, which we located at the Belleon Airport in Florida.
And what did you find in your search of Don Clark's van?
When we searched the van, we were able to determine that the van had a GPS system. From that, we obtained GPS data.
And would you recognize a copy of the records of the GPS system?
I would, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, my co-counsel will now screen share Exhibit 31, which is a pre-admitted exhibit.
Very well.
Agent Branham, using this exhibit, could you explain what you learned when reviewing these GPS records in Don Clark's van?
Of course, ma'am. From the GPS records, we learned that at 11:17 p.m. on August 18th, 2017, Mr. Clark's van pulled out of the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park. It drove 2 hours across Florida to Big Gum Swamp, stayed there for 44 minutes, before driving back 2 hours across Florida to the Bellion Airport, where it was subsequently abandoned in the early morning of August 19th, 2017.
Now, did you find any other evidence when you searched this van?
Yes, ma'am. We were able to take multiple samples of forensic evidence from that van.
And would you recognize a copy of a forensic report detailing that evidence if I showed it to you?
I would, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, my co-counsel will display Exhibit 5, which is pre-admitted.
Okay.
Now, using this exhibit, could you walk us through the forensic evidence you found inside of Don Clark's van?
Yes, ma'am. First, we were able to recover a number of fingerprints from within Mr. Clark's van. Forensic testing told us that these fingerprints belonged to Don Clark, Kara Bassett, and Kelsey Stebbins, who was one of the employees at the Elephant Park.
Did you find any other forensic evidence inside of the van?
Yes, ma'am, we did. In the back of the van, we recovered 6 of what we were able to determine were Mr. Clark's hairs.
And what was the significance of finding?
Your Honor, lack of foundation.
Can you explain?
Yes, Your Honor. The opposing counsel has not laid foundation as to how they were able to determine that these hairs were Mr. Clark's in fact. In today's case, it is the defense's contention that Agent Branham wasn't the one to conduct the forensics report. The methods used in today's forensic report would have to be laid as foundation in order for us to determine whether or not these pieces of hair were in fact Mr. Clark's.
Okay, so a couple, before I let Ms. Rapping respond, just a couple of points of clarification. You're objecting to the witness saying that the hairs belong to Mr. Clark. Is that the basis of your objection?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe the foundation has not been laid as to how this information was uncovered.
Okay, Ms. Rapping?
This exhibit, Exhibit 5, is the forensic report of the expert who did, or of the forensic analyst who did conduct the testing of the hairs found inside of the van. It is already pre-admitted, meaning that evidence that the hairs belong to Don Clark are already in evidence. This witness is simply testifying to what is already in this document and the conclusions in this document. Not once has this witness attempted to testify to the methodologies, and plus those methodologies are already mentioned in this exhibit, which is pre-admitted.
Defense counsel, if the witness testifies to what the report says, do you have an objection to that?
No, Your Honor. My objection is to understanding how this witness is able to interpret that these specific hairs belong to Don Clark. The foundation has not been laid as to how this information was uncovered.
Do you agree that the report says the hairs belong to him?
Yes, Your Honor. There's no objection to simply stating the hair belonged to Don Clark. However, stating that the forensic report indicated this is a lack of foundation objection.
Doesn't she know because she reviewed this?
Yes, Your Honor. However, in court today, the foundation has not been laid that a forensic analyst looked through the evidence and was able to determine that this hair belonged to Don Clark.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused, but I think I know how I'm going to rule regardless. I'm going to limit the witness to kind of in 2 respects. First, she can only testify to exactly what's in the report. And secondly, she should couch her testimony in the sense that she should say that this based on the report indicated X or Y, and shouldn't testify as it relates to her own personal knowledge, separate and apart from what she read in the report. So I'm going to overrule the objection for now. I don't think she's crossed that line and violated kind of those 2 parameters that I've set. But if you think that she's done that, you feel free to re-raise your objection. So overruled for now.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Agent Branham, could you continue telling us about what you learned about the hairs using Exhibit 5?
Yes, ma'am. Again, from the forensic report, we learned that those hairs in the back of the van belonged to Don Clark.
And what was the significance of those hairs belonging to Don Clark in your investigation?
The fact that the hairs were recovered in the back of Mr. Clark's van suggested to us that his body had been in the back of that van at some time point.
And had you found any other forensic evidence in the search of Don Clark's van?
Yes, ma'am. We were able to take forensic samples of algae found on the driver's side of Mr. Clark's van. We learned through forensic testing that these algae samples matched that found on the defendant's boots and on a wheelchair located within the elephant park.
Agent Branham, what was the significance of the algae samples matching the defendant's boots, the wheelchair, and the defendant's in the van? Excuse me.
Through forensic testing, we learned that all three of those algae samples matched that found at Big Gum Swamp, which was one of the van's locations on the night of August 18th.
And what was after finding that the forensic evidence showed that the algae was the same on the defendant's boots, the wheelchair, the van, and the Big Gum Swamp, what was the next step in your investigation?
Next, we looked in to see if Kara Bassett had a motive in today's case.
And what did you find in your investigation when looking for motive?
Of course, ma'am. During our investigation, we uncovered the phone records of Kara Bassett from the week of August 18th. From these phone records...
Excuse me, I did not mean to... Go ahead.
From these phone records, we learned that Kara Bassett did not try to text or call Don Clark in the week following his disappearance. We also learned that the defendant waited a full 7 days before notifying the FBI.
After finding out that the defendant didn't contact Don Clark and waited a week to contact the police, what did you do next?
Next, we looked into Mr. Clark's power of attorney.
And would you recognize a copy of that power of attorney if I showed it to you?
I would, ma'am.
At this time, my co-counsel will now screen share Exhibit 15, which is pre-admitted.
Okay.
Agent Branham, could you tell the jury what you learned from this power of attorney document?
Yes, ma'am. We learned from this power of attorney that in May of 2017, Mr. Clark signed his power of attorney over to his then wife, Kara Bassett. The power of attorney stated that if Mr. Clark became physically or mentally impaired, if he died, or if he disappeared, the defendant would gain control of all of his assets, which included the elephant park.
After looking into this power of attorney and learning that if Don Clark were to disappear, Ms. Bassett would gain power of attorney over his assets, what did you do next?
Next, we looked into a restraining order that Don Clark had filed against his wife, Kara Bassett.
I'd like to direct your attention to Exhibit 34 in your electronic notebook. Do you recognize that exhibit?
I do, ma'am. This is the restraining order filed by Don Clark on June 20th, 2017.
And how do you recognize it?
We were able to uncover this restraining order and learn more about it during the course of our investigation.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of the restraining order you reviewed?
It is, ma'am.
At this time, Your Honor, the government moves to enter Exhibit 34 into evidence pursuant to Stipulation 14. It's authentic in all respects.
Defense?
Objection, Your Honor, more prejudicial than probative. If I may be heard?
Sure.
Your Honor, today it's the defense's contention that Don Clark and Kara Bassett had an amicable relationship. We don't know why this restraining order was sent to a jury. We also don't know Ms. Bassett's side of the story in today's case as pertaining to this restraining order. In today's case, Ms. Bassett will not be testifying, which means that this document has the ability to cause undue prejudice on the jury.
Ms. Rapping?
Your Honor, this document does not have any more prejudicial value than its probative value. In fact, the probative value of this document substantially outweighs any prejudicial value that the defense is contending it will. In fact, this document will detail the relationship, and if the defense decides to bring in the fact that their relationship was a good relationship, this actually rebuts those facts. It details things that Don Clark, who cannot be here with us today, said about the relationship between him and Kara Bassett. Therefore, its probative value substantially outweighs being that Kara Bassett is the defendant in the trial of his murder.
Your Honor, if I may be heard?
One last time, then I'm going to rule.
Yes, Your Honor. Today, it's the defense's contention that this restraining order was also denied by the court, indicating that some element of this was not enough for Don Clark to get legal restrictions against Ms. Bassett. Therefore, the evidence in this document, we have no way of knowing if it was for certain or whether Don Clark was making this up. Moreover, the evidence in this document doesn't indicate what was going on every day of the marriage. It doesn't indicate what was going on the day before or the day after. Therefore, these specific pieces of evidence that fall under the restraining order are highly more prejudicial than they are probative.
Counsel, I think those are all fair points for you to raise either on cross-examination or during closing arguments, but I don't think that that precludes this document from being admitted on those grounds. And so on those grounds, I'm going to overrule your objection and admit the
Yes,
document.
Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, my co-counsel will now screen share Exhibit 34, the restraining order. Now, Agent Branham, what did you learn after reviewing this restraining order from Don Clark?
From this restraining order, we learned that Kara Bassett had threatened to kill Don Clark, her husband at the time, if he did not let her run the elephant park the way she wanted to.
Now, after your investigation, did you ever find any evidence of Kara Bassett's actions after Don Clark's death?
Yes, ma'am, we did. We learned that in October of 2017, Kara Bassett invoked Mr. Clark's power of attorney. Shortly after, she turned the elephant park into a sanctuary.
Agent Branham, after your investigation on behalf of the FBI, including the evidence you collected, who was the main suspect in the murder of Don Clark?
Kara Bassett, ma'am. We determined that Miss Bassett had the motive, means, and opportunity to kill her husband, so we arrested her for his murder on September 12th, 2018.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Agent Branham.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Agent, my name is Brooke Nues, and if at any time you can't hear or see me, please let me know.
Of course, ma'am.
I want to talk to you about a couple of points you brought up on direct examination, directing your attention to what has been previously admitted into evidence as Exhibit 31. Agent, this is a map of the route Don Clark's van took on the night of August 18th, correct?
It is, ma'am.
But I want to clarify something. Agent, you don't know who was driving this van, correct?
From this GPS information? No, ma'am.
You don't have an eyewitness saying they saw someone driving this van?
That's correct, ma'am. We don't have any eyewitnesses from the night of August 18th.
Moving on direct examination, you talked a lot about the FBI's thorough investigation in today's case. Today, I just want to break this down a little further. Now, Agent, you believe Don Clark is dead.
Yes, ma'am.
You concluded this after your entire investigation.
Yes, ma'am.
This included a search of several locations.
Yes, ma'am. We searched the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park, Big Gum Swamp, and a number of other locations, including Mr. Clark's van and the Bellion Airport.
Agent, let's talk about some of these locations. You would agree you didn't find the body at the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park.
No, ma'am.
You didn't find it in Don Clark's car.
That's correct, ma'am.
You didn't find it at the Big Gum Swamp.
No, ma'am. During our canvassing of the swamp, we were unable to recover Mr. Clark's body from within the swamp.
So, Agent, in the FBI's entire thorough investigation, you never found the body of Don Clark.
That's true, ma'am.
Moving on, I want to talk to you about how you believe Miss Bassett killed her husband. You came to this conclusion after the FBI's entire investigation.
Yes, ma'am.
And this investigation included interviews.
It did.
You spoke to Saba Grandi.
I did, ma'am.
But Ms. Grandi didn't have an alibi for the night of August 18th.
No, ma'am. We were unable to confirm if Ms. Grandi had an alibi. However, we determined that Ms. Grandi did not have a motive.
You also spoke to Nate Garson.
That's correct, ma'am.
But Mr. Garson didn't have an alibi for the night of August 18th.
Again, ma'am, we were unable to confirm if he had an alibi. However, we determined he did not have a motive.
You even spoke to Phil Clark.
Yes, ma'am, we did.
But Mr. Clark didn't have an alibi for the night of August 18th.
Again, ma'am, we couldn't confirm an alibi. However, Mr. Clark did not have a motive.
I want to talk to you about one more person. As the FBI's investigation, you attempted to speak to Lisa, Dawn Clark's ex-wife.
That's true, ma'am.
But Miss Clark refused to talk to you.
That's true, ma'am. She refused to talk to us at any length.
In fact, when you tried to speak to her, she told you Dawn deserved to die.
Yes, ma'am. She told us that after the fact, after August 18th.
I want to direct your attention to what has been previously admitted into evidence as Exhibit 4. Agent, this is a letter Dawn Clark's attorney sent you.
This is, ma'am. We received this letter in September of 2018.
In this letter, it says that Lisa was harassing Dawn.
According to Mr. Clark's attorney, that's true.
It says that Lisa was threatening Dawn.
Yes, ma'am.
It even says that Dawn wanted a restraining order against Lisa.
Yes, ma'am. According to Mr. Clark's attorney, that did occur.
But, Agent, I want to make something clear. In the FBI's entire investigation, you never had an alibi for Lisa Clark.
That's true, ma'am. We were unable to confirm whether or not Lisa Clark had an alibi.
Finally, I want to talk to you about your conclusions in today's case. On August 25th, you were called to the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park to investigate the disappearance of Dawn Clark.
That is true, ma'am.
But you concluded your investigation by arresting Ms. Bassett for murder.
That's correct, ma'am. During our investigation, Mr. Clark's disappearance case turned into a murder investigation, given the evidence we collected.
And this evidence, you believe an elephant tranquilizer was used to kill Mr. Clark.
Yes, ma'am. We believe the missing syringe of carfentanil is a potential murder weapon.
But Agent, I want to clarify something. No medical professional has confirmed your theory that Dawn Clark was killed by an elephant tranquilizer.
No, ma'am. No medical professional has. However, the FBI did.
And I want to be clear, no medical professional has confirmed that Dawn Clark was killed.
Ma'am, again, as the FBI, we conducted the investigation. No medical personnel gave their opinions during the course of that investigation.
Thank you, Agent Branham. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Redirect?
No redirect necessary, Your Honor.
Okay.
May Agent Branham be excused?
Sure. Ms. Rapping, do you have any other evidence?
No, Your Honor. At this time, the government rests its case in chief.
Okay. Ms. Nunes, will you be putting on a case?
Yes, Your Honor.
I thought so.
At this time, the defense calls Joe Young to the stand.
All right.
Good afternoon, Ms. Young.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Young, if at any time you can't hear or see me, please just let me know.
Of course.
Directing your attention to what has been previously admitted into evidence as Exhibit 7. Who is this?
That's Cara Bassett, a woman I've worked with for many years. I was hired to produce a documentary by her under the name Elephant Queen. It described Cara Bassett and her love for elephants perfectly.
You mentioned a documentary. Can you tell the court a little bit more about this?
Yes, so Ms. Bassett hired me in 2015, and since then I was pretty much at the park 5 days a week, every week. I really wanted to make sure I did my best work.
You also mentioned a park. Can you explain what you mean by this?
Yes, that was the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park that Ms. Bassett ran with her husband, Don.
I want to talk to you about Ms. Bassett's husband, Don. Does he still run the park?
He doesn't. He hasn't been around there since he went missing in 2017.
Ms. Young, today I want to talk to you about the disappearance of Dawn Clark. When was the last time you saw Mr. Clark?
I remember it like it was yesterday. It was August 2017. I was talking to him about my upcoming trip to Mexico and my late flight that night, but that was the last time I ever spoke to him.
You mentioned a trip. When you got back, was anything different about the park?
Surprisingly, yeah. pulled up and there were FBI agents parked all around outside. It was straight out of a movie.
Miss Young, you mentioned FBI agents. Did you find out why they were at the park?
Yeah, so apparently my boss, Don Clark, he had been missing for over a week and they didn't find anything, not even a body.
Today I want to talk to you about the body of Don Clark. At any time, did you search into the disappearance of Don?
Yeah, so based on what I observed from the FBI, there seemed to be no search. So I took matters into my own hands and traveled down to Costa Rica. I investigated his home in Hermosa Beach and because he has business dealings there.
And did you find Don's body?
No, I went to his house in Hermosa and honestly, it made sense that there was no body based on the evidence I found.
Miss Young, what was this evidence?
There wasn't a speck of dust in the entire house. Fans were still running and clothes were hanging in the closet. It seemed as if someone might have been living there.
Moving on, I want to talk to you about the search the FBI conducted. From what you observed, what was their investigation like?
Honestly, there didn't seem to be an investigation. From what I observed, there were two witnesses or employees that I worked with, Ms. Grandi and Mr. Garrison, who were never interviewed. In addition, I took over 2,000 hours of footage of the Bassetts portraying their marriage and the work they did together, and the police never interviewed it. I would have gladly handed it over, but they never even asked.
Miss Young, I want to talk to you about Don Clark's alleged death, directing your attention to what has been previously admitted into evidence as Exhibit 33. What is this?
This is Mr. Clark's obituary. It was a year after he disappeared, and he was officially declared dead.
Miss Young, who declared Don Clark dead?
His wife, Kara Bassett.
And to the best of your knowledge, was this done after Don Clark's body was found?
No, they never found a body. I think Kara only declared him dead because she needed a way to cope and move on.
Thank you, Miss Young. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross,
Yes, Your Honor.
proceed.
Now, Miss Young, on direct examination, you talked about a trip you took to Costa Rica. You traveled to Costa Rica, right?
I did, yes.
You went to look for Don Clark.
I did, yes. Although I did not find a body or any evidence of a body being there.
You went to Don Clark's home in Hermosa Beach.
Yes,
Right.
I did. I found lots of evidence.
Well, let's talk about that evidence you found. You didn't find any evidence that Don Clark was alive, did you?
I found lots of things that seemed very suspicious, such as the dust being, or no dust being present, the fans running, and Don's clothes specifically hanging in the closet.
Well, you can't tell this jury if anyone else had been living in this house, right?
No, I definitely can't, but I definitely would say that this creates suspicion and if not doubt.
I'm not asking if this creates suspicion or doubt. I'm simply asking, do you know of anyone else living in Don Clark's home?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered, if I may be heard.
Sure.
This witness just testified that she cannot tell the jury about anyone else living in Don Clark's house. I believe opposing counsel is just repeating the question.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Sure.
I'm simply redirecting the witness to my question. She got off talking about doubts. I was simply redirecting her to the question that she can't tell the jury if someone lives in his house.
Yeah, to the extent that the witness is evasive, I'm going to give Ms. Rapping pretty wide latitude to control the witness. If you think it crosses the line into something beyond just beyond what's appropriate, then feel free to raise an objection, but I don't think we're anywhere close to the line, so you can proceed, Ms. Rapping.
Yes, Your
Yeah.
Honor.
Now, you stayed in Costa Rica for a whole week, right?
I did.
And in that week, you watched the home of Don Clark, right?
Yes, I did at the time.
Now, you never saw anyone go into the house.
No, I didn't.
You never saw anyone leave.
No, but I didn't find a body either.
Well, and you didn't find Don Clark alive in the week of being in Costa Rica, did you?
No, I never did.
Now, you've been working for Kara Bassett since 2015, right?
That is correct, yes.
You'll agree in your work with her, she's treated you fairly well.
She has, yes.
She paid you $5,000 a month to produce her documentary.
Yes, I was very happy to be working with her.
And she also promised you 20% of the documentary's earnings.
Yes, assuming that we would do well, which I think based on our work together, the documentary was on a really good course.
Kara Bassett had control over what you would film, right?
She did. She wanted me to make sure I got all her good sides.
Right. She told you not to record her fights with Don, right?
Well, it's a personal matter. I wouldn't want my personal affairs portrayed on a documentary either.
That's a yes to my question. She asked you not to record.
Yeah, she didn't want her personal business aired on television.
And she even told you to delete any footage you did have of their fights, right?
Yes, that is true because it was personal.
Now, you were witness to some of the fights that you had, right?
I was, yes.
You were witness to a fight where Kara Bassett threw a vase at Don Clark's head.
I was, yes. Every couple fights, but I did witness that, yes, ma'am.
Now, you heard some of the stuff they were fighting about, right?
A little bit, yeah.
You would hear Kara Bassett asking for an elephant sanctuary, right?
Yes, she wanted love and peace for the elephants in her relationship.
But Don Clark never gave her that sanctuary, did he?
No, but they did say that one day they were going to work towards it together. It was only a matter of time.
But in the time you saw them fight, after you saw them fighting, he never got her that sanctuary, right?
You know, he never did, but businesses run really slowly. I don't know all the details, but I know that Mr. Clark was hoping to make his wife happy.
Well, Don Clark kept the elephants in cages, didn't he?
I guess he did, yes.
Kara Bassett didn't want the elephants to be in cages.
No, she wanted elephants to be protected, but it wasn't a plan for power or money, just protection for elephants.
Well, you'll agree that when Don Clark was alive, Kara Bassett did not have power over the sanctuary, over the park, excuse me.
I do think that she had a lot of influence. You know, she wasn't the sole leader of the park because it wasn't her money, but she still worked with Don. They were a partnership. They were the most amazing couple I'd ever seen.
Young, she didn't have the power to transform the park into the sanctuary, did she?
No, but Don didn't have the unilateral control over the park either. There were a lot of gears that had to keep turning.
Well, it wasn't until after Don Clark disappeared, Kara Bassett gained control, full control over the park, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And it wasn't until Don Clark disappeared that Kara Bassett transformed the zoo into the sanctuary, right?
I would like to say that's a consolation prize for the loss that she suffered. She lost her husband, but yes,
yes to my question, she didn't transform the zoo into a park until
Your
after.
Honor, I would like to ask that opposing counsel allows my witness to finish her answers if possible.
I do think the witness is being evasive. However, Ms. Rapping, please try not to cut the witness off if you can. I know sometimes, especially over this format, it's tough. But I'm going to get, like I said, I'm going to give you some latitude to kind of rein the witness in, but try not to cut the witness off. So overruled with that caution.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Young, it wasn't until after Don Clark's disappearance that Kara Bassett transformed the zoo into the sanctuary.
That is correct, yes.
Now, you were with Kara Bassett after Don Clark disappeared, right?
After I returned home from my trip to Mexico, yes, I came in contact with Kara.
And when you returned home, you never saw Kara attempt to text Don Clark, did you?
I didn't personally observe it, no.
You never saw Kara Bassett attempt to call Don Clark?
You know, I wasn't paying that much attention. I was focused more on working.
That's a yes to my question. You never saw her attempt to call Don Clark?
I didn't personally observe it, but I wouldn't say that I was closely observing her personal use of her cell phone.
And you're aware that Kara Bassett waited 7 days to call the police, right?
I am. I'm a little, I don't know, I think that's a little odd, but every person's different.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Ms. Young, on cross-examination, opposing counsel spoke a lot about how the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park changed. To the best of your knowledge, was there a plan to change the park when Dawn was alive?
Yes, there was. The couple always talked about wanting to make the change together. And it's really
I think our witness dropped off. Is that
Your Honor, I believe that may have happened. Is it possible if I could have a second just to contact the witness?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to pause our record here.
Thank you. Your Honor, I believe the witness was able to come back.
Great. I guess we can proceed.
Ms. Young, were you able to complete your answer?
I'll restate it just for the clarification of the court, if that's all right.
Yes, that's fine.
All right, so basically the Clarks always talked about making the change together, and it's really unfortunate that Dawn wasn't able to see it through, but Kara did change the park into a sanctuary. She said it was what Dawn would have wanted.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Thank you, Your Honor. If there are no further questions, may this witness please be excused.
Ms. Rapping, are we done with Ms. Young?
No recross necessary. We're done.
Okay, she can be excused then. All right, Ms. Nunes, do you have any other evidence or do you rest your case?
No, Your Honor. At this time, the defense rests.
All right. Before we proceed into closing arguments, I'm going to ask the scoring judges, our jury, to switch now to speaker view, and I'll do the same. And Ms. Rapping, whenever you're ready to go ahead and proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. For years, Kara Bassett was told you have no say. You have no power. You have no control. But on August 18th, 2017, she took that power. She had a plan. And a part of that plan was taking the life of Dawn Clark. Now, members of the jury, today we have proved to you beyond any reasonable doubt that Kara Bassett intentionally and deliberately caused the death of her husband, Don Clark. On August 18th, 2017, Kara Bassett injected her husband with the deadly poison carfentanil. You learn that FBI agent Steph Branham searched the park and found that that syringe of carfentanil was missing. Kara Bassett, who had access to that carfentanil, was the last person to be with her husband, Don Clark. After injecting her husband with the deadly poison carfentanil, she wheeled his body out in a wheelchair, threw him in the back of her van, and drove him 2 hours away to the Big Gum Swamp. Members of the jury, you learn that the mud found on the bottom of the defendant's shoes not only connected her to that wheelchair, it didn't only connect her to the van, but it also connected her to the Big Gum Swamp where the van was last found. Kara Bassett, the only person who was connected to the van, the wheelchair, and the swamp. And after disposing of her husband's body, she drove that van 2 hours to the Belion airport to cover up her crime. Now, the defense tried to insinuate that Dawn Clark could have possibly been in Costa Rica, but Jo Young told you herself she found no evidence of Dawn Clark being alive. She had no idea who could have been living in Dawn Clark's home. Members of the jury, you also learned that the defendant's actions were not consistent with a grieving wife. Only 2 months after her husband disappeared, she took control over the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park. And she did what she had been waiting to do since 2011. She transformed that zoo into her dream sanctuary. She got rid of Dawn So she finally had that control. You also learned of the defendant's motive in today's case. You learned that in May of 2017, the defendant got a power of attorney that granted her all of the powers she never had. The power over his money, the power over the park, and the power over those elephants. Agent Steph Branham told you that she invoked that power only 2 months after her husband disappeared. You also heard that in June of 2017, the defendant threatened her husband's life. Don Clark filed a restraining order against the defendant. And in that restraining order, he detailed that Kara Bassett said, "If you don't let me change this park, I'm going to kill you." And only 2 months after he filed this restraining order, she did exactly that. Members of the jury, to gain all the power she ever wanted, she had a plan. And she carried out that plan. And today you have a duty to serve justice. A duty to serve justice for Don Clark, who was a victim of Kara Bassett's plan. We ask that you don't let Kara Bassett take power over you. We ask that you find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Nunes?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, Your Honor, before she proceeds, I forgot to ask before my closing, could I use the remaining time for rebuttal?
Ms. Nunes, I assume you have no objection to that?
No objections, Your Honor.
Have at it.
No one can confirm he was killed. And that's what Agent Branham told you today on the stand, that no one can confirm that he was killed. Why? Because in today's case, there was no body, there was no search, and there was no murder. Today, at the beginning of this trial, I stood right here and told you that the people would fail to meet their burden. But the people brought witness and facts and a story to attempt to meet this burden. But members of the jury, without the body, without the search, without the murder, where is the case that the people says meets their burden? Now, today, the people had to prove two things: that Ms. Bassett killed her husband and did so with malice aforethought. So let's take a look at the information the people brought today to answer these questions. Recall, Agent Branham took the stand. Now, Agent Branham told you that in the FBI's entire thorough investigation, no one found the body. They searched the greater Tallahassee Elephant Park. They searched Don Clark's car. They searched the Big Gum Swamp. But the body was nowhere to be found. Why? Recall, Joe Young took the stand. Miss Young told you that when she went to investigate, because the FBI wouldn't, she found evidence that Don Clark wasn't murdered. In fact, he may be alive today. And just like that, the people have failed to meet their burden. But members of the jury, they went on. They went on to tell you Ms. Bassett killed her husband and did so with malice aforethought. They told you that Ms. Bassett is the only person that had the motive to do this. But what they failed to tell you is they didn't search for anyone else. Because on August 25th, the government pointed the finger at Ms. Bassett. Today on direct examination, Agent Branham told you about the thorough investigation the FBI conducted. But recall when she took the stand on cross, she didn't have an alibi for 3 suspects, and she didn't have an alibi for Lisa Clark. Ms. Branham told you today on the stand, Dawn deserved to die. That's what Lisa told the FBI when they tried to question her. But still, they didn't find an alibi. Why? Because their search only had 1 suspect. Today, the people stood here and told you that on the night of August 18th, Ms. Bassett picked up a syringe, killed her husband, and took all of his money. But members of the jury, on the night of August 18th, no one, not the FBI, not Agent Branham, not opposing counsel, knows what happened to Dawn Clark. And the fact is, there are too many reasonable explanations, and that is reasonable doubt. It's reasonable to believe Lisa Clark had the motive to kill Dawn Clark. It's reasonable to believe he could be in Costa Rica. It's reasonable to believe something else happened. And the people, they can't show you a body. They can't show you a search. And they cannot show you that this was a murder. And that is reasonable doubt. Members of the jury, when you have 2 conclusions based on circumstantial evidence, one pointing to guilt and the other pointing to innocence, you must adopt the one of innocence. You must side with Miss Bassett. Because in today's case, there was no body, there was no search, and members of the jury, there was no murder. Find Miss Bassett not guilty.
Rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. Members of the jury, the defense just told you that there was no body, there was no search, and there was no murder. Now, the evidence showed that Dawn Clark's hairs were found in the back of the van. That van that drove to the Big Gum Swamp where Kara Bassett disposed of that body. Kara Bassett hadn't reported him missing for a whole week. For a week, his body was in that swamp. They also told you there was no search and that there were other suspects with motives. But members of the jury, Agent Steph Branham told you about her search. And she told you that the only person who would gain anything from Dawn Clark disappearing was Kara Bassett. The ex-wife, Lisa Clark, had nothing to gain. The other suspects who couldn't give an alibi had nothing to gain. Dawn Clark himself had nothing to gain from disappearing. He lost $8 million in assets if he were to disappear on his own. The only person who could gain something was Kara Bassett. And the evidence showed that she did. She had a plan to get the power. And that plan was to murder her husband, Dawn Clark. And that's exactly what she did. Don't let her plan take over you. Don't let her get that power. We ask that you find Kara Bassett guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Before we go off the record, is there anything that we need to address?
Nothing from the defense, Your Honor.
Nothing, Your Honor.
All right, then we're going to go off the record.